So in my recent video, I explained what a calorie deficit is, and I basically gave you the formula for fat loss, and I told you that the best way to get into a calorie deficit is eating less. This influences the calories inside of the formula. Does that mean we don't do anything for the calories outside? Absolutely not. Before we begin, please hit like, and if you're new here, hit subscribe and the bell to stay up to date with all things fat loss. So the calories outside has everything to do with your metabolism, which is your energy expenditure, and your energy expenditure is comprised of the following. Basal metabolic rate, BMR, is the largest component, the amount of calories you would burn if you were in a coma. Non-exercise activity, thermogenesis. In sedentary individuals, NEAT accounts for 6 to 10% of energy expenditure, while for active individuals it can account for over 50% of energy expenditure, and this is the amount of time you spend moving around without really thinking about it. So fidgeting, doing chores, walking, etc. Exercise activity thermogenesis, or EAT, can be 0% for sedentary individuals, but a maximum of 15 to 30% of total energy expenditure for elite athletes, and this is structured training and exercise. So this includes workouts, going for runs, skipping, etc. Thermic effect of feeding, TEF, is next at around 7 to 10%, and this is the amount of energy expended digesting food. So can we maximize any of the above in order to increase energy expenditure? Well, as you've just seen, each of the above falls into a range, and we can take certain measures to ensure that they reach their upper range. BMR, the largest component, is the hardest one to influence and will not be increased by too much in percentage terms, but the best way to do so is to increase the amount of muscle mass you have, and the best way to do this is to strength train as your primary means of exercise, and you should focus on doing compound movements as they are the most effective means of building muscle mass. Now, to see which ones are most effective, I'm linking both my strength training for fat loss and calisthenics for fat loss series below. That said, the increase in BMR alone is likely to be very marginal. NEAT is where you're going to have the largest influence. As you saw, the range is 0 to 50%, and the best way to influence this is to find ways to be lightly active throughout the day, and walking is the best way to do this. Another thing that will increase NEAT is strength training. Having more muscle mass makes you move more, but something that will decrease NEAT is cardio. The thing that most people think burns a lot of calories and makes them lose fat causes them to do less of the thing that helps lose the most fat, which is NEAT. So EAT is exercise, and this is hard to get to the 30% of calorie expenditure mark, and if you do so, will be at the expense of other energy expenditure parameters which have a much larger influence, so as I just mentioned, NEAT. But if you do want to get it to the 30% of energy expenditure, what would that look like? Well, endurance runners who train for around 2 hours per day in their high volume weeks can manage to get it to around about 30% of their energy expenditure. But if you're like me, not an elite level athlete, and have no time to go for hard runs for 2 hours per day and find it boring, you can get EAT to around about 15% of energy expenditure. However, there is a trade-off. If you're focusing on cardio or HIIT at the expense of strength training whilst in a calorie deficit, long term, you'll likely reduce muscle mass, which reduces your BMR, and it also reduces NEAT, the type of exercise that has the potential to burn the most calories. If you're focusing on exercise, strength train and use the extra energy you have to keep active during the day by getting your steps in, because strength training has a positive effect on BMR and NEAT, and these comprise the bulk of your calorie expenditure for the day. Finally, we have TEF. This is the energy used digesting food. The range is 7 to 10% of daily energy expenditure. What you eat does matter from this point of view. So the TEF for fat is 0 to 3%, carbohydrates is 5 to 10%, protein is 20 to 30%. So basically, you need to eat more protein in order to increase your TEF. So make sure you prioritize eating protein in each meal, and this will be the best way to influence TEF and get it up to the 10% range. Most ways to increase calorie expenditure, apart from NEAT, have a very marginal impact. It's far easier to focus on not consuming calories than it is to expend them. And I would also say that everything I've mentioned in this video as ways to speed up your metabolism aren't done solely for the purpose of speeding up your metabolism. They're done to get you strong, healthy and lean. And doing the above will give you the best chance of maintaining the results I've just mentioned for good.